Aloha and welcome to Botany 101. My name is Angela Nishimoto. Okay, so this is Botany 101. It's going to be the first lecture on humans and the environment. But first, we'll go into some course information. All right, so this is my name, Angela Nishimoto. You may call me Angela. I would prefer that. All right. And I have a certificate of completion in agriculture from Windward Community College, as well as an AA degree from the same place. And I also have a BA in botany and a Master of Science in botanical sciences. Okay, that's my introduction to you. And this course is Botany 101 or General Botany, right? It's an introductory course in plant biology, and if you're watching this right now, you know that the televised lectures will be on oceanic cable, all right? And this next thing is important, okay, for you to note. The Laulima site for our class is, the URL is https://laulima.hawaii.edu, all right? You would need to actually log on using your UH login and password. And this site is important because this is where you're going to access your quizzes, all right, the assignments for the class, and also your exams. You will be taking your exams through this site. Okay. Now, some of the information regarding myself is my office is at the LCC campus, or the Leeward Community College campus, in BS, or Biological Sciences 206. Okay, and my office is a little different because there's no direct access to the outside, to the walkways. So if you need to come see me, which I encourage you to do, please enter through BS 205, BS 207, or BS 209. All right. BS 205 and BS 207 are office spaces for other faculty, and BS 209 is actually a classroom, but you can knock on the doors to either of the offices, and if I'm in my office, I'll let you in, or people in the other offices will let you in. Or if you go through BS 209, you can go straight through, you know, the classroom to the opposite wall where the door to my office is. Okay. My phone number is 455-0624. You may leave messages night or day at any time, okay, if you need to. And my email address is angelani@hawaii.edu. All right, that's my email address, okay? Angelani@hawaii.edu. And I really want to encourage you to contact me, okay? Because I know when you're taking a distance ed course, sometimes it's kind of hard to find the time. You know, you're kind of keeping up with your lectures, and you're doing your assignments, and you have other courses, of course. But please contact me, you know, send me an email, come see me in my office. I very much want to put a face to your name, you know, because of course I have your name on my class list, okay? And I would like to get to know you, so I'd like to get to put the personality to the face as well, okay? So if you contact me, I'll get to know you. We can start actually having an actual relationship, okay, instead of just kind of, you know, watching the lectures and like that. So please, I want you to contact me if you can. Okay, I had a couple of students who contacted me last semester, and that was very good because they let me know what was going on with them. Now you can contact me not only in cases of emergency, if there's somebody in your family who's ill, or something goes wrong, you know, of course you can contact me then, but please contact me when things are going right too. Let me know how we're doing, okay? All right? Let's see, course organization. This is going to be kind of a long patch here, right? So Botany 101 is an introductory course in plant biology. Topics that we cover include the structure and function of plant cells, tissues, and organs. And the organs include the roots, stem, leaves, and flowers, fruits. I bet you didn't really think about that. Flowers and fruits are actually the same organ, but they're actually the same organ at different phases of development. All right, we're going to talk about concepts of biological evolution and classification, the diversity of plants and plant-like organisms, because we don't just cover plants, we also cover organisms that are traditionally studied by botanists. Okay, also we're going to cover genetics and ecology. All right, now course goals. Okay, you will learn the basic concepts of biology, the nature of science, the basic biochemical and physical nature of life and the cell as a unit of life. We will be presenting to you concepts such as plant structure, plant metabolism, plant reproduction, concepts of genetics, biotechnology, taxonomy, evolution, economic botany, and ecology. Now, course objectives, this will be a long one, all right? So you should be able to identify, name, and explain major terms and concepts of biology and botany as detailed below. All right? To express the nature of scientific study and specifically how certain botanical discoveries were made. To understand the parts of the cell, its basic chemistry, and how it is a basic unit of life. To be able to describe major plant organs, roots, stem, and leaf. To understand how plants obtain and use water and nutrients and the role of soil and the growth and development of plants. To explain the processes of photosynthesis and cellular respiration and their roles in plant metabolism. To be able to describe the theory of evolution, how this theory helps to explain the development of different plant forms and plants' responses to their environments. To be able to describe how plants reproduce through floral and other reproductive structures, because plants reproduce through flowers, or flowering plants do anyway. They reproduce through flowers for sexual reproduction. Okay, plants can also do asexual reproduction as well. To explain cell division, mitosis, and specialized reproductive cell division, which is known as meiosis, right? I don't know why they actually have the terms so similar to each other, right? Because mitosis and meiosis sound very similar to each other, so for some people it can be a little bit confusing, right? But hopefully we'll actually be able to differentiate the two as we go along, okay? Now, another course objective is to understand basic Mendelian concepts of genetics and how Mendel developed them, okay, as well as other people developing concepts of genetics after Mendel. Mendel was the father of genetics, okay, Gregor Mendel, as well as the present-day knowledge of the genetic code and how it is expressed. To understand the system of botanical naming and how plant and plant-like organisms are related in evolutionary ways. We're all related, believe it or not. To comprehend how plants and plant-like organisms are related and studied by botanists. Okay. To investigate the many ways plants play important roles in our lives as food, medicines, and many other important commercial products. All right? To develop the use of writing as a major tool of learning and reflecting. So learning logs are the ways written expression will be used in the course. Okay, these are written responses to questions that are designed to help a student explore new concepts. To receive full credit, learning logs must meet the criteria of length, timeliness, it means you should turn it in on time if you can, okay, and quality of thought. To develop critical thinking skills on scientific issues through exposure to the development of scientific theories, students will learn how new concepts come about and become accepted into the scientific body of knowledge. Okay, examining the role of hypotheses, their testing, data evaluation, and acceptance of major scientific theories help to demonstrate the process of constant revision of scientific knowledge. That's the thing about science, it's constantly being revised. Okay, so the lecture and the learning logs will hopefully accomplish this. Okay, so generally what we want to say is, I know that we're covering a lot of different topics and it's going to be challenging, okay, But let me encourage you not to get scared. Don't lose courage. Okay, we'll get through the semester together. All right, you'll learn a lot of concepts. You'll learn a lot of botany, and you'll learn a little bit of biology as well. Because of course, botany is actually a subcategory of biology, which is the study of living things. Okay. Okay, so student learning outcomes. Okay, examine the characteristics of living things and the basic structure and function of the plant cell. Analyze important metabolic processes in plants, including plant responses to the environment. Examine the structure and function of the major plant organs, root, stem, leaf, and flower, fruit. Analyze the unique anatomical characteristics of major plant groups and relate these structures to the functions they perform, such as the leaf doing photosynthesis, the stem doing transport and support, the root doing absorption and anchorage. Okay, so we're going to actually talk about these things and learn about them. Investigate plant evolution and genetics. Investigate the importance of plants to life on Earth, including the socio-economic aspects. Like we said, that's all very important, it's all very complicated, and it's all maybe a little bit challenging as well. But don't worry, you'll get it, okay, as long as you kind of keep to the lectures, make sure you watch the lectures in a timely fashion, you keep up, because once you fall behind, it's very hard to catch up after that, okay? But I know that sometimes life happens to people and things kind of slide a little bit, but don't worry, contact me and we can try to get you caught up if in case you fall behind, okay? Now, methods of instruction, okay? So viewing the lectures on television and active learning by the student will be supplemented by reading of the text, okay? The quizzes will also facilitate learning. All right, topics to be covered are listed in page 1 of the syllabus, okay, which will be on the LaLima homepage. All right, it will be under resources. Now, other guides to learning are the chapter concepts found at the beginning of each chapter of the text, summaries and questions at the chapter end. Now, evaluations. There will be 3 exams over the course of the semester, each worth 75 points. There will be 2 learning logs, each worth 10 points. And look at this, there are 10 LaLima quizzes, each worth 10 points. So please, the LaLima quizzes are meant to help you. Okay, you can use them to rack up points as much as possible, because you can see that that's 100 points out of a total possible points of 420. Okay, so please do your best not to miss LaLima quizzes. So you should check your email at least twice a week, okay, to see if I posted a quiz, and make sure you do it in a timely fashion, because once the quiz is closed, they don't open again. Okay, that's absolute. I'm sorry about that, but we have to draw the line somewhere, Now, final grades will be determined by how many of the total possible points you earn. It is not on a class curve. Okay, so therefore it is possible for everyone to earn an A. I actually had a lab a couple of semesters ago, okay, that everybody in the lab, and it was a lab that was pretty full, I think there were maybe 17 or 18 students in it, and almost everybody got an A. And that was because they were diligent, they did the work, they came to class, they did the work well, and they also did extra credit. So only one person didn't get an A, which was kind of unhappy, but actually that person had the misfortune of disappearing in the middle of the semester and popping up at the end, which is always a surprise. But I'm glad to see that that's the first class I ever had that almost everybody got an A, and I was very happy about that. Okay. Teachers are happy to give A's. Okay. Now you will have access to current grades periodically on MyUH and or LaLima. Okay? Now an A grade, if you are assigned an A grade for the course, that means you have received or you earned 90 to 100% of the total possible points for the course. A B grade is 80 to 89%. A C grade is 70 to 79%. A D grade is a 60 to 69%, and believe it or not, a D grade is still a passing grade, okay, for the purposes of graduation like that, but nobody wants to have a D. And of course, below 60% is unfortunate that that you would not pass the course. Sorry about that. Okay, now extra credit. So extra credit points may be given for attending certain workshops and certain activities like field trips and service projects, right? And there will be a maximum of 35 extra credit points allowed for the lecture course, okay? Now, ways to get extra credit. Everybody's interested in this, of course, okay? They can help your grade. Attend a current Success Connection workshop or SC workshop. Okay. A complete schedule of these SC workshops are available from the LRC or the library. You can also check out taped Success Connection workshops at the library and view them there. Okay. Especially recommended are taking tests in the sciences and reading in the sciences. Now, participate in work projects, all right? That's another thing, okay? So if and when there are work projects, these will be announced via email, so make sure you check your email, okay? And may include work in the teaching gardens at LCC. So for the SC workshops, you must turn in 1 page of notes. You don't need to word process it. Don't need to spend time word processing it. You just need to write down some notes to actually show that you viewed or were there at an SC workshop. Okay? So 1 page of note or response is also required for viewing a taped Success Connection workshop. And for work projects, only attendance is required. I'll have a attendance sheet at the work project. Now, exam makeups. The dates of exams, okay, are indicated on the course schedule. If you cannot take the exam at the specified date, please contact me at least 1 week before the test is given so I can arrange alternate testing. Okay? It is your responsibility to contact me. Okay? That's your responsibility. Right? So makeups are allowed only at the instructor's discretion. That's me. Okay? So if you're allowed to make up the exam, it should be taken before the next televised broadcast. Please behave responsibly in this matter. Okay? And I know sometimes that it can be kind of hard to study for an exam, and I know that generally it's well, what I'll do is I'll actually post a study guide at least a week prior to the exam that you can use to study with. Okay, and actually the best way to do this is in how to study is you'll print out the study guide with spaces between the question and then write out the answers or word process the answers between them as much and thoroughly as possible. Okay, that's actually the best way to study for the exams. Even though the exams are online and they're multiple choice, true or false, and matching. You might think that they're easy, but they're not going to be easy. Okay, I know from experience that the students find it hard. So I'm going to try not to make it as hard as I can. Of course, I'm not going to torture you or anything, but just the subject matter is difficult. So I would encourage you, to use a study guide, use it well. It's a tool for you to learn the material with because you'll be viewing it through the lectures, but you can also review it by using the study guide and reviewing the lectures. Because the lectures will also be available via podcast on the Laulima site. Okay? Now, so with the goal of continuing to improve the quality of educational services offered to students, Leeward CC conducts assessments of student achievement of course, program, and institutional learning outcomes. Okay? And that's the SLOs we were talking about, the student learning outcomes. Student work is used anonymously as a basis of these assessments, and the work you do in this course may be used in these assessment efforts. All right? Okay, now with that housekeeping out of the way, we're going to actually go into the lecture. Okay, now so our relationship with our environment. There are less than 20 million people in 6,000 BC on the planet, less than 20 million. Okay. By the year 1850, there were 1 billion people, so the number of people had increased 5-fold, in those few thousand years. Then the population doubled within 70 years after that. Within 46 years, it had actually doubled again, and by another half as well. In 1986, there were 5 billion people on the planet. Okay. More people in 2009, 6.7, and they actually estimate that there will be 7.8 billion people in 2025. Okay, so what we know generally is that the world is the same size that it has always been, ever since the dawn of humanity. The world stays the same size, but we're actually getting more and more people, and this is like an emergency, really a real emergency. So in 2050, they expect the population maybe to be up to 10 billion people, if you can imagine it. Okay? Okay, so we need certain things, as humans. Okay, we need certain physical requirements. We need food, we need clothing, and we need shelter. Okay, and to feed us, to clothe us, and to house us has a big impact on the environment. Okay, because what do? We tend to clear natural areas. Okay, and this is a kind of sad photograph of a clear-cut forest. Okay, everything on this side is all cut down. They might even have burned it, right? And this is something that happened to what we now know as Waikiki. There was a marshland there before, and they filled it in, right? And they built Waikiki on top of that. Okay, also we tend to clear our tropical forests at a devastating rate right now. Okay. Furthermore, we pollute water and air just by existing, just because there's so many of us in our industry and our transportation and just us breathing. We pollute the air, with carbon dioxide, right? We pollute water with our wastes, right? And we also kill what we consider to be pests with poisons, okay? Now that might not be such a good thing. It might alleviate, your pest problem temporarily, but what happens is that not only do you kill other organisms, or you have actually the natural predators that die too when you're using an insecticide, but you also kill non-target organisms, things that you might want to be there. Okay, that's very serious, very important, and very bad. Okay, we don't want to kill everything. Okay? So what we need to do, we need to stop increases in population. Okay, look at all these people jammed on the subway there. And we need to maintain ecological balance in natural areas. Okay? And we also need to stop bad agricultural and industrial practices. Okay? We also need to return organic material to soil, such as from garbage, compostable garbage. We need to actually return organic materials to soils rather than just using chemical fertilizers. All right? We need to harvest timber and other crops in order to prevent erosion or the wearing away of the soil. All right? We should also stop the use of herbicides for clearing areas. Okay, it's very bad because the herbicides will actually kill other organisms. Okay? The herbicides actually get into the groundwater, and they also get into streams and ponds and lakes. And what they'll do is herbicides will actually kill fish. It will harm fish and other aquatic animals as well. So we're not just hurting the plants that we're trying to kill, but we're also hurting other organisms as well. Okay? Not funny. We need to recycle garbage, like we talked about, compost. We need to recycle paper. We need to recycle glass. We need to recycle metals. So here we have this recycle bin. I know that we've actually started doing recycling in our country, in the United States, but still a lot of this garbage, paper, glass, and metals go into landfills and are just thrown away when they could be recycled. Okay? We need to conserve energy and water universally all over the world. okay? Because most of our energy comes from non-renewable resources such as natural gas, coal, and oil, all right? We also need to preserve habitats for endangered species, not just for endangered species, but just preserve the habitats by themselves, because it's very important to have intact wild areas for plants and for animals to actually live, because they need a place to live too. So one of the big problems with having so many humans is that we tend to clear natural areas, we tend to overexploit animals and plants, like ginseng, like, the tigers kill for their skins, which is completely against the law. It's against CITES, the Convention for Trade of Endangered Species, okay? Now, some consequences of our carelessness, because of course what we're doing right now when we're not doing something good is we're being careless, okay? Famine, which means starvation, respiratory diseases from pollution, poisoning of food. So these three can actually affect premature death in much of the population of the world, and that's actually happening right now. Acid rain can destroy lakes and forests. The greenhouse effect can affect climate change, okay? And contamination of groundwater with nitrates and also fertilizer runoff is a complete problem. Look at that. Oh, gross it is. Yeah? We're such messy people. We also have the reduction of ozone, which can be a problem because ozone actually protects us. Okay? Global climate change. In here we have an image of an area that has been subject to desertification. Okay, so that's one thing that's happening, as well as the big storms and the terrible tornadoes and hurricanes that have been happening of late. And we also have the loss of biodiversity. Now, biodiversity is actually the entire diversity of all living things. Okay, and it would be a shame to be losing something as beautiful as some of our native Hawaiian plants. Okay, so loss of biodiversity. Once something goes extinct, it never comes back. Okay, I know that people are trying to breed aurochs, A-U-R-O-C-H, aurochs, which are some kind of prehistoric cattle that the cave people actually drew pictures of on cave walls, right? I don't even know if there was actually cave people, but well, they did do cave art, right? And some of these aurochs, they're trying to actually get some DNA from fossil aurochs and splice it into the DNA of oxen and cattle, which is kind of interesting, okay? But they're seeing if they can actually resurrect the auroch. Okay, now the point is we need plants, okay? So oxygen gas, we need oxygen gas. All right, of course, we need to breathe in oxygen in order to do our cellular respiration. So cellular respiration has to do with breaking down food using oxygen, okay, into usable forms that our body can use called ATP, all right? So that's called cellular respiration. Okay, so we need oxygen in order to do that. And about half the oxygen in our atmosphere actually comes from unicellular algae in the oceans. Maybe 40 to 50%, okay? Plants also remove carbon dioxide. So the plants not only generate oxygen gas, but they remove carbon dioxide, which we've seen is implicated in global warming, all right? All our foods actually come from plants, okay? Wheat, rice, corn, potatoes, fruits, vegetables, they all come from plants. And also beef comes from cattle, all right? Chicken comes from chickens, okay? And also, let's see, pork comes from pigs, right? So we have all these different kind of meats, and all of them actually eat plants. Okay, so we either get our food from eating plants directly, or we get foods from actually eating animals that eat plants. So the whole basis of the food chain on this planet are based on plants. And also remember, oxygen actually comes from plants too. Okay, spices, okay, cardamom, turmeric, vanilla, pepper, okay, black pepper, also chili pepper are all spices, and there's more, and also herbs such as oregano and basil. They all come from plants. Luxury items such as perfumes that are made from things like attar of roses, or even locally there's a plant that was imported into Hawaii called Klu, K-L-U. I think it's Acacia farnesiana, right? It's also known as cassie, and people imported it into Hawaii because they were going to start a perfume business in Hawaii, which didn't quite take off. But still, it has a really, really nice scent to it. And of course, perfumes are a luxury item, yeah, that a lot of people would not like to do without. We're kind of used to actually living kind of high, you know. And then beverages such as tea, okay, coffee, okay, even colas come from plants. The high fructose corn syrup in soda actually comes from corn, of course. Okay, now we need lumber for houses, that comes from trees. We need cellulose for paper and also for cardboard boxes. We have so much packaging nowadays. And textiles, we have cotton, okay, which is actually a very hungry crop. You need to actually do a lot of work, do a lot of fertilizing, apply a lot of pesticides to actually raise cotton. Okay, there's also linen, which is the strongest of the natural plant fibers. There's also rami, right? And also artificial fibers such as orlon and nylon come from cellulose, which comes from plants. Okay. So furthermore, we need plants for fuels. Okay. So coal is actually fossilized plant remains. Okay, and oil are actually microscopic plants and also microscopic animals that fed on them that have actually been compressed and pressurized to form petroleum. Okay, so oil actually comes from plants, all right? These are finite resources though. Okay, they're non-renewable and they will eventually disappear despite the kind of craziness of fracking that people want to do nowadays. You know, that sounds completely off base to me and also very destructive. Okay, now methane is a gas, okay, CH4, all right? It can be an alternate source of energy. It can be used in place of natural gas, okay? So people in India and other countries have been actually using methane for, from manures and also from decomposing plant matter. Okay, they've been using methane as a fuel source, which is something that we might want to think about. Okay. Now ethanol too can be made from corn, can be made from switchgrass, can be made from wood chips. Okay, it can be blended with gasoline for cars. Actually, some cars that can run on 85% ethanol. Okay, so they're actually looking into biofuels, right? So we also need plants for drugs. 20 to 40% of the over-the-counter drugs as well as prescription drugs are directly derived from plants, and this isn't even counting the plant analogs such as aspirin. Okay, so aspirin is actually originally derived from willow. Okay, but of course they actually constructed a molecule to actually make aspirin. Okay, we need to also recycle organic matter too. Okay, and plants do that. You will actually take up organic matter and incorporate it into their bodies, right? And bioremediation, that is the use of plants and bacteria, okay, to break down pollution in water, in soil, and in the air. It's called bioremediation, using of live organisms in order to break down pollutants. Okay, so far we've seen many reasons why we need plants. Okay, so actually the study of plants is called botany. So botany is a study of plants. Okay, people who are botanists study plants scientifically. All right, botany is actually a science, and science is actually a search for knowledge of the natural world. Okay, so in terms of botany, it has to do with the natural world of plants. Okay, and the word botany actually comes from three terms: boscine, which means to feed; botanicos, which means botanical; and botane, which means plant or herb. Okay, so these three terms are all from the Greek, ancient Greek. Okay, and all three terms show you that we have a very intimate association of plant and food. Okay, so plants to us mean food from the most ancient of times, probably in prehistory, as well as during the ancient Greek area. Now science, what do we do in science? Okay, we observe, not using just our eyes, but also our ears, our sense of smell, our sense of taste, our sense of touch. We observe with our physical senses, with all our senses, okay, phenomena in the natural world. We record these phenomena, we organize this information, and we classify these facts. So science has to do with all these different activities regarding facts. Now the scientific method, you make an observation of some kind of physical phenomenon, and that usually causes you to ask a question. Okay, then you narrow the question and formulate a hypothesis, which is an educated guess or a tentative explanation for an observation. Even physicians, when they're diagnosing somebody, they will actually use an educated guess. So usually when you want to find an MD or you want to find a DO, you probably want to have somebody with some experience that's not just out of medical school, because the more they have experience, the more knowledge they get, the more syndromes they see, and when they're actually diagnosing you, they're actually using their best guess as to what is wrong with you. And even the doctors with the most experiences can be wrong sometimes. Okay, but a hypothesis is a tentative explanation for an observation. Okay, so what we'll do is that we can test this hypothesis, and they usually use parallel tests, or we usually use parallel tests. Okay, and that has to do with having a control situation. We have a variable that is not changed, and an experimental situation where the variable is changed. We have an example coming up right now of the scientific method. Okay, so observation. Okay, ripe orange is sweet, so if you've actually eaten a good, nice, juicy, ripe orange, okay, it's very sweet, right? The rind is usually orange in color, or the ka'u oranges tend to be kind of greenish orange, but they also are sweet when they're ripe. Okay, so the question that it generates, okay, are all citrus fruits sweet? Okay, that would generate a question. If oranges are sweet when they're ripe, or all citrus fruits sweet when they're ripe? Okay, so the hypothesis could be that all ripe citrus fruits are sweet. Okay, then you set up a testing situation where you taste different ripe citrus fruits. Okay, so in this case, the control would be ripe oranges for the test, and the experimental variable will be different citrus fruits. Okay, so you can see right away, right here, what is this? This is a lemon, right? And this is a ripe lemon, because an unripe lemon is green, but a ripe lemon is yellow, okay? And lemons are, guess what? They're sour. Okay, so they're not sweet when they're ripe. Okay, so if you actually find something that refutes your hypothesis, okay, then you can actually modify your hypothesis, and then you can modify the hypothesis that some ripe citrus fruits are sweet. All right? Let's see. Now, different subcategories of plant study, okay, include plant anatomy, which is a study of the internal structures of the plant, okay. So Marcello Malpighi, okay, of Italy, okay, that the Malpighiaceae was named after, which is a flowering plant family. He was famous in the 1600s for studying the structures of roots and stems, okay. And Nehemiah Grew of England in the 1600s also was famous for studying wood and classifying wood, right? Now, why do you think that these people actually did this work in the 1600s? Guess or think. It has to do with the development of the light microscope, okay? Because plant anatomy has to do with the studying of tissues and also cells. All right. Now, some other sorts of subheadings of plant anatomy include dendrochronology, which has to do with studying the rings of woody plants and seeing what climate must have been like in the past. Okay. In botany, I knew a woman in Honolulu who owned a business. She was a plant anatomist. So she had learned to make very thin sections of wood from archaeological sites, like sites in Halava and other archaeological sites in Hawaii and other Pacific islands. So she could identify what kind of wood people used, okay, for certain purposes. I'm not sure exactly what, like maybe for burning things or actually for making implements. All right. Another kind of subheading of plant anatomy is forensic science. Okay, so she was sort of doing forensic science. Forensic science also has to do with getting of evidence and interpretation of evidence. So if somebody who's been arrested for a crime actually has plant material in the cuff of their pants or on their shoes, they can actually tie them to a crime scene if indeed they were at the crime scene. Okay, and we also have paleobotany. Paleobotany has to do with the study of plant fossils. Okay, so these are all subcategories of plant anatomy, okay, which is a subcategory of botany, right? Now, plant physiology is a study of functions of plants. So here we have a little diagram of photosynthesis, okay, the sunlight hitting the leaf, which is a major organ of photosynthesis. And you have water actually being split by light, giving off oxygen gas, okay? So that's part of the light reactions which generate these substances, NADPH and ATP, which we talked about a little bit earlier, being the currency of energy in the cell. And then carbon dioxide comes in during the Calvin cycle and is fixed to form sugars. Okay, that's what photosynthesis is. And plant physiologists actually study photosynthesis. So the field of plant physiology was actually founded by Jan van Helmont in the 1600s. What he had done is he'd actually taken a 5-pound willow tree, he planted it in 200 pounds of soil, okay, covered the plant in the pot up so no dust would settle in, and he watered it. And he didn't really record the amount of water he gave the plant. But what he did is he grew the plant for 5 years, and he took the plant out of the soil, weighed the plant, weighed the soil. The soil had only lost 2 ounces, right, but the plant had gained 196 pounds. Okay, so his conclusion was that the weight and the mass of the plant actually came from the water. But of course, now we know that it's the carbon dioxide in the air as well as the water that made up the bulk of the plant. Okay, so he was the first to actually do experiments in plant physiology. So we actually date plant physiology from the 1600s from Jan van Helmont. Okay, plant physiologists also study why flowers bloom and how they bloom. Okay, they also study how hormones are made. Okay, they study the effects of temperature and light and also water on the growth of plants. Okay, and they also study how plants actually conduct materials within themselves. All right, so plant physiology is all that and more. Quite a complex area of study. Now, plant taxonomy is actually the oldest subcategory of botany. Okay, it's actually the oldest branch of plant science, and it has to do with describing, naming, and classifying plants. All right. Now, broader science is plant systematic. That's broader than taxonomy. It has to do with the science of developing methods for grouping. So you see here the plant kingdom or plantae. Okay, can be divided into spore-bearing plants and seed-bearing plants, all right? And the spore-bearing plants, including algae. Okay, so you might think, why is algae actually in here? Okay, because algae are actually protists or protistans, right? But algae do photosynthesis, and it's actually some ancestral alga that gave rise to the land plants. So algae are considered by some people to be plants that live in water. Okay, mosses, of course, are plants. They're green. They do photosynthesis. And we have ferns. Most people know what ferns are, right? You can tell just by looking at it, right? Then we have seed-bearing plants. can be divided into the flowering plants, or angiosperms, okay, and conifers and cycads and ginkgos and nedums, and these are different kinds of gymnosperms. Okay, angiosperm means covered seed, gymnosperm means naked seed. Okay, so the angiosperms bear their seeds in a fruit, and the gymnosperms bear their seeds on the outside of reproductive structures. Okay, and the angiosperms can be divided into the monocotyledons and the dicotyledons, and we'll get into this more later on in the semester. Okay. We also have plant geography, which is the study of how and why of plant distribution. Okay, you can see all these plant regions here. So this is actually an area of plant study that began in the 19th century, and the most famous plant geographer was Nikolai Vavilov, okay, who was a Russian scientist. Okay, he actually did a lot of work on the origins of plants from these different spheres around the world. Okay, and a lot of what he actually put down has been since, adjusted and maybe even refuted in some cases. But he was very important in terms of establishing the science of plant geography. Okay, Nikolai Vavilov. Now, plant ecology. Okay, ecology, the word itself comes from oikos, which means, eco comes from oikos, which means house. Okay, so plant ecology has to do with the study of the interactions between plants and other organisms, and between plants and their environments. Okay, so this was also founded in the 19th century, right? Rachel Carson was very famous as a writer. In 1962, I believe, she published a very famous book called Silent Spring, right? And in that book, she actually documented that at that time, more than 500 different kinds of toxic chemicals were introduced every year to control pests as pesticides, okay? And some of the effects that this had, detrimental effects that this had on humans, as well as the environment. So people generally date the modern environmental movement from the publication of Silent Spring. Okay. Now we also have plant morphology, which is another area of plant study, which is a study of form and structure of plants. So here's looking at a little branch of a dicot, or woody dicot. Okay, a woody plant. It has secondary meristems, which actually provide for the growth of secondary xylem, secondary phloem, or secondary vascular tissue, and also the bark or cork on the outside. And here's an herbaceous stem that does not have the secondary growth. Okay, so they tend to be smooth and green. Okay, and then here you have the terminal buds. You can see that these are the different forms or morphologies of these two different types of plants. Okay, and then we also have the study of genetics, okay, which is a science of heredity. Remember we talked a little bit before about Gregor Mendel, okay? So Mendel was an Augustinian monk. He was actually a father, but people actually call him the father of genetics because he carried out these studies on the garden pea plant, right? And he did his work in isolation in his monastery, So when he did finally publish his results in the 1860s, nobody understood what he was doing. But people who rediscovered his work in the 1900s actually called him the father of genetics. He actually did his work in a vacuum, but he did brilliant work, brilliant man who deserves the title that he got, okay? Now genetics is also has subcategories such as plant breeding, where you actually get different plants and you hybridize them with each other. Okay, there's also genetic engineering, where you actually get DNA from one organism, you cut it out of the genome of one organism, and you splice it into the genome of another organism. Genetic engineering, which is kind of controversial in some circles nowadays. Okay, then we also have the science of genomics, which is the study of genes and their functions. Okay. There's also cell biology. This used to be called cytology, the study of cells. Okay, so this was actually helped a lot by the study of how cells multiply, mitosis and meiosis. And here we have a plant cell with its cell wall on the outside, okay, chloroplasts and vacuole, central vacuole. These are structures that are only in plant cells, that are not in animal cells. And we have other structures in the plant cells that are common to animal cells as well, like the nucleus, the ER, or rough ER and smooth ER, the endoplasmic reticulum. I think this is the Golgi apparatus, mitochondria, which are the powerhouses of the cell, and the cytoskeleton. Okay, so we'll be getting into this more, later in the semester. Okay, so people learn much more about cell biology when they actually developed the electron microscope. They could actually see cells and see the structures within cells. Okay. Another area of plant studies, economic botany, which is a study of the practical uses of plants, such as this coffee plant, which is big business, I guess, in the world, because coffee cherries still need to be hand harvested, right, because they ripen at different times, right? So they need to be harvested by hand, right? So the image that you saw on the screen were actually green coffee cherries, and they turn red, so people need to pick them by hand and process them in various ways. So because the human labor is involved, that's one of the reasons why coffee prices are so high, okay? That the more somebody needs to actually do something with a product, the more it usually costs. The more processed something is, the more expensive it is, okay? We also have ethnobotany, which is the study of the uses of plants by indigenous peoples. Okay, so here we have some Takung Bushmen, the sand bushmen of the Kalahari Desert. Okay, that's ethnobotany, right? And other fields of plant study include phycology, which is a study of algae. Remember we talked about that a little while ago, algae, and why we study algae. But we also have mycology, which is the study of fungi. So you're thinking, well, phycology is a study of algae, and algae are in the Protista, the kingdom Protista, right? And the study of fungi is called mycology, and the fungi are in the kingdom fungi. So botanists study other organisms, even including bacteria, not just plants. Okay? These are different kind of organisms that were traditionally studied by botanists. Okay, that's why we actually have them in here now, why they're studied in botany, even though fungi are actually more closely related to us and to animals than they are to plants. Okay, that's a kind of an interesting thing. Okay, because fungi are actually heterotrophs; they derive their sustenance from outside themselves, whereas plants and algae are autotrophs. They actually do photosynthesis and make their own food. So fungi are absorptive heterotrophs, where they actually secrete digestive enzymes into their substrate and then absorb them, while we animals are ingestive heterotrophs. We all need to eat, right? That's one thing all animals have in common. We all need to ingest our food. Okay? Now, bryology is a study of mosses, so that's a kind of plant. Okay? Pteridology is a study of ferns, which of course is another kind of plant. Here we have a fern frond, so this whole thing is a single leaf, with these being pinnately compound leaves, or bipinnately or tripinnately compound leaves. We'll talk more about that as the semester goes on. And then there's actually a field called palynology, which is a study of pollen, okay, especially fossil pollen, okay, because pollen is persistent. The exene, or the outside of the pollen, remains as it is, and it fossilizes very easily. So people tend to study pollen. They'll do these pollen cores that they've done, like on the windward side of Oahu, in the Kauai Marsh, to see what kind of plants actually grew there thousands of years ago, thousands and tens of thousands of years ago, right? So they'll take these cores and they'll study the pollen that they bring up, because all the other plant material would have been decayed by then. Okay? All right, let's see. So let's do a little review of what we've covered today. Okay, so we talked about our impacts, our human, very human impacts on the environment, because we're such intelligent animals. We've managed to impact our environment kind of much more than you might think. Okay, we found out that all life depends on plants. All life on Earth depends on plants. We talked about the scientific method. Okay. We talked about disciplines of botany. Okay. And so our topic today was humans and our environment. And the take-home lesson today is we need plants. Okay? Anyway, that's all that we have for you today. Today, our first lecture. Hope that everything's okay with you and everything's all right. Okay, don't get nervous. Okay, don't be intimidated. You know, I'm approachable, so please contact me. Okay, we'll see you next time. Aloha.